Welcome in to Extreme Talk, presented by Complete Real Estate, where experience and integrity matters. Thank you so much for tuning in. Man, football's back full swing. I didn't get to go to any games this weekend. Had some family stuff at a wedding to handle, but not to handle, but to go to. But regardless, didn't get a chance to catch a game, but I was staying up to date and trying to stay current on what games are going on. Definitely did some catch up, and so we're going to talk about the games that happened this past weekend. A lot of very telling stuff. Seek no longer unbeaten versus non-conference. That streak ended very dramatically and very anticlimactically on Friday night. ACSC stays unbeaten versus non-conference, and I believe AISA only has a couple losses. So we'll run through it real quick. First and foremost, right off the bat, I want to give a big congratulations to the two young men who were named the Offensive and Defensive Player of the Week last week. Wyatt Sutton from the Tennessee Heat was named the Offensive Player of the Week, and Ty Ward was named the Defensive Player of the Week. Ty Ward from Riverside Christian. So their drink should be on the way if they haven't gotten them already, as well as the shirt, the redesigned shirt. And we'll get some pictures of those sent out, probably with the player and the coach and his head coach. So we'll get those sent out, and that way y'all can see what the shirts look like. But definitely wanted the kids to get those first. But congratulations to them, and a lot of people asking how were they selected. Well, I'll tell you. Honestly, try to make it as easy as possible, and I understand it's a lot of work for the coaches, but there are coaches who out there who are able to do it. So, players of the week were picked off of stats that were uploaded to Max Preps, and primarily going to be looking at close games or closer games or comebacks, something like that, where a player who had great stats really contributed to his team either coming back and winning or losing, because again, Riverside didn't beat Zion, not this last Friday, but the Friday before. But Ty Ward had such an incredible game. It was a close game, especially up until I believe the third quarter or into the third quarter when they started pulling away. Zion did. So, very deserving young man. Same with Wyatt. His team had to come back and get the win against Lancaster. So it's going to be stats uploaded to Max Preps and somewhat of a close game or a comeback, attempted comeback, something like that. If a team beats another team 50-0 and a guy puts up incredible stats, okay, he put up stats against a team who's rebuilding or might be struggling a little bit, maybe missing some players that would have made a difference. But if it's a close game, a comeback game, something to that effect, that guy definitely contributed. And I'm not saying the guy who his team blew the other team out. I'm not saying he didn't contribute. You get what I'm getting at. So let's run through these real quick. Get them pulled up. Freedom Cowboys, Zion Christian. This is a game, of course, the way Seek has it set up is each team will play each other in the same week. Unless the coaches change the week for scheduling reasons. So every off season when it resets, their divisional games in the same weekend, and they can kind of schedule around that. And that way, coaches can get schedules somewhat finalized during January and February. I know some conferences sometimes it's a little fluid; they don't get finalized till May, June, even July. I've seen, unless something drastic happens. So. Zion Christian, Freedom Cowboys. Zion coming off the win. Freedom kicking off their season. They had played in the FCA Jamboree and had a good showing. And they had a good showing Friday night. 62-24. Cowboys get the win over the Eagles. And second year in a row, Freedom has beaten Zion. I don't think they'd played before him. Matter of fact, I know they had never played before. So here in the series, Cowboys lead 2-0. Let's go down to Alabama. Let's talk about a heartbreaking loss for the Tennessee Heat. They traveled down to Pinson to take on the Lighthouse Warriors, and was able to keep up with this game. Again, it's not so much even on the coaches. I'm going to call out parents maybe alumni who are at the game, Max Preps has a way for you to do live scoring updates. And there's a lot of people, not just myself, there's a lot of people who are interested in seeing how a game goes. And so I challenge you, put Max Preps on your phone, put the app on your phone, find the game that your team is playing or that you're going to be at, and update it. It doesn't even have to be a detailed, this long of a touchdown pass with this much time left. It doesn't even have to be that detailed. It could literally just be, hey, touchdown here in the second quarter, extra points good or extra points no good, something like that. But a big shout out to Tennessee Heat. I believe Cliff Luchtefeld is the one who does the live scoring for them. But just a back and forth game. Lighthouse Homeschool in the first quarter put up a touchdown, put up two in the second quarter. Tennessee Heat had a touchdown in the second quarter. So it was 22-8 at halftime. Kind of looked like maybe it was over, but it also mirrored the game in Gatlinburg against the Panthers the Lighthouse played. Third quarter, there was no scoring. Fourth quarter, Tennessee Heat, 2 touchdowns. They miss both extra points. They get those extra points. They win the game. 22-20 was the final score. Lighthouse Warriors with a big win. And missed 2-point conversion there at the very end by the Tennessee Heat, I believe, with about a minute left. So just a tight game. But I do want to give a shout out. Lighthouse has their stats there on Max Preps. I'm going to shout out some of these young men real quick. Elliot Knowles, we saw him in the Rising Stars game last year. Of course, we saw him all throughout the regular season, and he absolutely showed up and had a great year taking over for Preston Graham. Elliot Knowles, 10 of 18, 200 yards, touchdown and a pick. Clay Boatman and Ben Hirsch, 2 young men who are back. Clay Boatman had 24 carries for 95 yards. Ben Hirsch, 5 carries for 32 yards, so not as many yards, but he did punch the ball into the end zone twice. He also had a receiving touchdown. He had 2 catches for 56 yards. And Daley Smith, 6 catches for 128 yards. I'm going to skip down here to defense real quick. Clay Boatman, I mentioned he contributed on the offensive side at running back. Let's see if he had any receiving. He did have a catch for 5 yards, but he also led the team in tackles with 15 tackles, 7 solo, 8 assists. Gavin Graham had a sack. And then Cullen White, a senior there for the Warriors, 2 passes defense and a fumble recovery. Clay Boatman also forced a fumble. So a big win there for Lighthouse Homeschool. They move to 2-0. So congratulations to them. And Tennessee Heat have yet to beat Lighthouse. They played them 2 years ago down in Alabama. It was a big win for the Warriors. Last year, everybody knows they kicked off the season with the heartbreaker there at the end. 34-33, I think, was the final score. This year, 22-20. So always a good game whenever the Heat and the Warriors meet up. Let's jump over to White House. Franklin Classical out of CCS, out of TSIAA. Christian Community coming off the loss to FCA. Classical kicking off their season. And the Colts all over the Knights, 48-0. And Franklin Classical has not beaten CCS since 2011, I believe, is the streak. So the streak continues. Colts are victorious, moved to 1-1. And it's a big win for the Colts to get back on track after a tough loss to FCA last week. South Haven Christian traveled down to Lancaster. They themselves both coming off of losses. South Haven with a 9-point loss to Grace Academy. And Lancaster coming off the loss to the Tennessee Heat. Back and forth game all game. I don't have the box score. I do remember some of the updates put on Instagram. But South Haven gets the big win, conference win over Lancaster, 30-20. And if I'm not mistaken, TSIAA is doing a single division setup. It's not split anymore. So they only have 6 teams. So to my knowledge, all 6 teams get in the playoffs. So, it's going to be tight down the stretch, and a big win for South Haven here early on in the season. Let's jump down to South Carolina. Augusta Eagles, of course, this week. Pac Panthers played last week, but this is the week that some of the SIFA teams take on some of the SCISA teams. And you had Augusta Eagles taking on Lawrence Academy. And Augusta Eagles able to come away with a big 20-14 win over the Lawrence Academy. I believe they're the Crusaders. Yes, the Crusaders. Tight ball game in the first half. Lawrence actually had the lead, 8-6 at the end of the first, 14-6 at halftime. But the Eagles making it happen. Touchdown in the third quarter, and then they get the touchdown in the fourth quarter. Didn't get the 2-point, but it didn't matter. They were able to hold off Lawrence, and so a 20-14 win for the Augusta Eagles. SIFA with a big win there. And then the Pack Panthers had to come from behind again. Let me see. Hang on just a second. Let me back up. I mentioned the Augusta Eagles-Lawrence game, and let me look through these stats real quick. You had Nathan Whiting, a sophomore with 7 tackles, 5 solo, 2 assists, as well as John Crane, another senior with 5 solo, 2 assists, and then Nathaniel Reese, same situation. Ethan Thompson contributed 2 tackles for loss. Brooks Bell, 2 tackles for loss. Nathan Whiting had 2 sacks, so a big game from him. And then Nathaniel Reese had an interception, and Brody DeRaps had 2 takeaways, 2 picks, and a fumble recovery and a forced fumble also for Nathaniel Reese. So big game there for the Augusta Eagles. Let's jump over to the Pack Panthers Jefferson Davis Academy game. Pack trying to come off that loss to Lighthouse and Gatlinburg, and Jefferson Davis kicking off their season. Again, a little bit of a closer one. Of course, Pack, I mentioned they had to come back, down 14-8 at halftime, put up 2 big touchdowns in the third quarter rather. That gave them a 24-14 lead. They put up 2 more tutties in the fourth. Jefferson Davis tacked a touchdown on, but it was not enough. Pack Panthers 38, Jefferson Davis 22. So a second big win for the SIFA. Jance Lamb had a big game. 7 of 10, 115, and 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. And he also contributed 22 carries and 123 yards and a touchdown as well. So if my math is correct, 238 yards of offense from the young man. And then over on the defensive side of the ball, you had Larry Reinhardt, 13 tackles, 5 solo, 8 assists. Ethan Lehman with 10 tackles for himself. And then he also had 5 tackles for loss. Brendan Sheely, 6 total tackles and 5 tackles for loss. And then Cam Humans had 7 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. Sacks all over the board. Brandon Sheely had 3. Ethan Lehman had 3.5. Sheely also forced 6 hurries. And Kyler Barkley got a little banged up in that Lighthouse game. He's able to come back, have 2 interceptions. Cam Humans had a pick. So a big game there for the Pack Panthers, and a big win for them to get back on track. We'll talk about the game they've got coming up here a little bit later on in the show. And then one final game in South Carolina, Harvest Christian taking on Faith Christian. It was the Knights all over the Hawks, 48-0. And a big shout out to Harvest. Despite the loss, they did put their stats up on Max Preps. And just running through them real quick, Greg Lyon, 6 carries for 56 yards. And over on defense, you had, where's it at? Grayson Hay with 6 tackles. And he also contributed a sack. Keith Milam with a fumble recovery and a forced fumble. So big game for the Hawks. Relatively, they did come away with the loss, but big game for them. All right, let's go to Louisiana real quick. No, one more game in South Carolina. Victory Christian taking on Orangeburg Christian. Orangeburg Christian coming off the loss to Tri-Cities Christian out of Tennessee, out of Seek and Tri-Cities area. Victory Christian kicking off their season. They kicked it off with a win, 44-12. Victory gets the win. Big win for them. Let's jump over to Louisiana real quick. John Paul the Great Academy, historically, traditionally, over the last couple of years, they've been very good. And they were very good on Friday night. 72-0 over First Baptist Christian. John Paul the Great, they are the Guardians, and they put up 40 in the first quarter against the Eagles, and then a touchdown and a field goal in the second quarter, 2 touchdowns in the third, and then a touchdown in the fourth, I believe. is how it played out. Shout out a couple of their young men real quick for JPG. Micah Thomas, 3 carries, 135 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Fontenot with 2 carries for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. So big games from those 2 young men. And then you also had Charpentier. I don't want to mispronounce that name. He's number 12. He's a freshman. 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. Dominic Kramer had 6 tackles total. Deku picked up a sack, and then Lormond picked up 2 interceptions. So big game there for JPG. Don't look now; they're 2-0. They had a win over Acadiana Christian. I forgot to mention, I think last week on the show, had a win over Acadiana Christian, 56-12. So JPG now 2-0, and we'll keep an eye on those NHSA rankings that may be coming out this week. We'll see. I know they let a couple games go by before they start putting those out. Let's see. Let's jump over to Alabama. Had a wild one. I mean, absolutely wild in Rainsville. Russell Christian in a conference game taking on Cornerstone Christian. The Eagles and the Warriors going at it. Tied at 54 at the end of regulation. It was 8-6 at the end of the first quarter. It was 14-13 at halftime. 20 points put up by Cornerstone. Let's see if I can do the math. It would have been 33-32. Yep, 33-32 at the end of the third quarter in favor of Cornerstone Christian. And then Russell able to put up 22 in the fourth. Cornerstone had 21 in the fourth. So we're tied at 54. And in overtime, the Warriors come away with the win 62-54. What a barn burner down there in Alabama. It would have been a great one to catch. And big win for Russell Christian, starting off their season, brand new head coach, and trying to get the ball rolling down there. Jump over to Mississippi real quick. We had Tuscaloosa Christian out of the CFA taking on Mississippi Phoenix Sports Academy, first-year team. And it was the Warriors with a big win over the Phoenix. It was close in the first quarter, 16-14. Second quarter, Tuscaloosa able to put up 3 touchdowns. Mississippi Phoenix putting up 2. And then Tuscaloosa handling the business, putting up 16 in the second half. Mississippi only able to put up 6. And so a 56-34 win for Tuscaloosa Christian. Big win there, non-conference win. Jacksonville Christian hosted Meadowview Christian. 51-26. The Thunder have moved to 2-0, and I want to run through some of these stats real quick. If they're there. Nope, doesn't look like we have them. I'll try to find some stats here, possibly closer to the end of the show. But a big win for Jacksonville Christian over Meadowview Christian coming out of the AISA. 2 more games to go through. Evangel Christian, 44. East Central, nothing. East Central with a big win last week over Tuscaloosa Christian. Speaking of Tuscaloosa Christian, with a big win over them. And they rolled into Alabaster, possibly looking... I'm sorry, Evangel was at East Central, so Evangel on the road again. And East Central hosting them. Thought maybe they could, pull an upset on the Lightning, who they've never beaten in varsity. But Evangel handling business. Kemp Swords, 11 of 15, 225, and a touchdown. He did throw up 2 interceptions. But Caleb Austin, who stepped in place of Hunter Atkins, and real quick, I want to give a shout-out to the young man. He put on his social media that he did tear his ACL in the Black Bear Brawl game up there in Gatlinburg. So thoughts and prayers to him, and hoping for a speedy recovery for that young man. Always fun to watch him play, and a bright young man. Got a great future ahead of him. Caleb Austin, the senior for Evangel, who has stepped in place of Hunter Atkins. 8 carries for 110 yards, 4 touchdowns. And Will Welch had 5 catches for 29 yards and a touchdown. He's really transitioned nicely over to wide receiver with Kemp Swords coming in and taking over at quarterback. Let's see if I can pick out Clay Stanton had 7 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss. You had Grady Watkins with 7 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss. And then you also had a whole bunch of Lightning with sacks, Wesley Holmes and Braden Rives with an interception. So a big win, conference win for the Lightning over the Patriots, and we'll see how that contributes here at the end of the season. The last game I want to go through real quick, Springwood School traveled to Georgia, Edison, Georgia, to take on Calhoun County. And the Cougars, who've played 8-man for the last 2 years, I believe, got a chance to watch them take on Southern Prep a couple years ago in their first year over an 8-man. Springwood School took a 14-0 lead in the first quarter. Second quarter, both teams scored a touchdown, so 20-6 at halftime. Calhoun County, though, unable to complete the comeback. Springwood puts up 7 in the fourth quarter, and 27-6 is your final score. And at this point, I want to get my guest on. Get him keyed up here.
Hello.
Joining me now is the head coach of the Springwood School Cougars down there in Lanett, Alabama. It's Coach Joey Birch. Coach, I appreciate you taking the time to join me.
Oh, glad to do so.
And you guys are not the Cougars, you're the Wildcats.
We are the Wildcats, yeah.
I apologize for that. I was looking at Calhoun County. I was looking at Calhoun County's name, saying Springwood. Didn't work out very well. Coach, speaking of Calhoun County, I'll start there. Big win for you guys this past weekend. Obviously, a non-conference game in another state. A little bit of travel involved for you guys, but big win for you and your guys.
Yeah, it was. Last year it was our first round in 8-man football, and we didn't have a game until the week 1 instead of 0 week, and we only played 9 regular season games. So I wanted to open up with someone that would be a real challenge for us, since our goal is to win our state championship and things like that, and kind of worked out with Calhoun County, and they definitely were a challenge for us.
Now, you mentioned that state championship, and I'm going to back up to that last year. You guys come up short with Evangel Montgomery, who you guys, you met in the regular season, and then you meet them in the championship game, and the names across the board for both sides, Tristan Garrett, Caden Cook for you guys over on that side, Nee Addy, Jordan Sharp, some other guys that they had. It was a massive matchup, and the first time AISA had an 8-man championship game. I thought the environment was great. I mean, obviously, you're playing at, 10 o'clock in the morning? So, a little bit tougher there. But I thought, despite the result not going you guys' way, I thought the outcome was great.
Yeah. Besides us not winning, definitely, it was a great experience for us. And maybe on that note, it was a little bit too big of a game for us. We'd been years and years of not winning many football games and not even, being competitive. And that the AISA did a great job, including us in their, final playoff date. And we did have to play early, but it was packed out, in a big stadium down there at the Cramden Bowl. And, it was just so loud, and it was a great atmosphere for us. And, great experience for our kids, but we did run into problems that we hadn't faced before just because of the environment. We had lots of penalties and jumped off sides, and just probably a lot of nerves and jitters and things like that we hadn't had all year. So got a good taste in our guys' mouth. I really want to go back and finish that thing up this year.
One more question about that game. You guys had met Evangel, I mentioned earlier in the season. You got a big win over them. And going into that championship game where you've played them and you kind of know, you've gotten a chance to watch them all year. Of course, they've watched you all year. How do you prepare for a game like that where you've met each other, you kind of know what each person brings to the table, and then how do you get your guys ready for a game like that?
Well, that's one of the reasons I picked up Calhoun County in season 1, because they're very, very similar to what Evangel will be. They'll be big, strong, fast, very athletic team, very physical team. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to play them to open the season up is to get another game and get some of the, mistakes that you might make on your first game out of the way before you go into region play, which we do this week. And but they're very comparative to what Evangel will be. And when we played Evangel last year, it was early, and uh, we all kind of coaches after we got that W kind of said, "Boy, I hope they don't make it in the finals when it cools off," because we were better shape than they were, and that played a big part in the first game. It was back and forth, and we just kind of wore them down. And Nee, he's a great player. He wasn't in the best of shape in August as he was in
Right, right.
October or November when we played, and he was a difference maker. In that state championship ball game.
Now, having guys like Caden Cook who were able to sign with Huntington, and
Mhm.
guys being able to move on to the next level, how encouraging was that for the guys that still, they were underclassmen, still kind of questioning the move last year, and I'm sure everybody was, but seeing that and then seeing how competitive y'all were able to be after the last few seasons of football, that had to be encouraging for your guys and just for the school environment overall.
Yeah, we had a big senior class. Worked hard getting people out. Just to have a team last year, and I think we lost 11 guys, and like I said, Caden's at Huntington, and uh, Jonathan Johnson. He could have went and played on that level as well, but he chose he's going to join the Navy and do that. So that's the
Hey,
path
that
he's
that is that
chosen.
is that is more admirable in my opinion. That's just as
So
admirable. Love it.
there was a lot of questions about 8-man football, and people came to the games. We had guys that didn't play football last year in the school that we had to kind of re-recruit and get them there. And once they saw the excitement and us winning and the crowd and just the atmosphere that we had at our home games and going to the championship in that environment, it was an easy sell to get those guys to come back out and play football. They had played in the past, and like you said, they didn't know about 8-man football. They'd heard all kind of things. Is it flag football? Is it this? Is it that? Is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
whatever? And when they came to games, they saw if you don't count how many's out there, it was a real football game that's exciting and fun to play. Had one kid transferred out to Troup County Public School, and he came back his senior year, and I kind of knew that he would. Every game he was there across the fence watching his fellow classmates play.
Yeah.
And then we were able to get a couple of more guys from Valley, and we had a couple from Opelika join the team just because of the success we had. So it's been good for our school, and it's been good for our program to play 8-man. We love it. Our parents love it, and our kids love it, and it's been great for us. So it's really helped us go out and recruit kids and get kids. And we picked up 2 kids from Opelika here.
Nice,
Our,
nice.
our running back that had a great game, and a tight end, 2 brothers, C.J. Johnson and Greg Johnson. Uh, and they were looking for a place to land and play basketball, and they weren't sure about football because they wanted to play both. And we just sat down with them and their parents and kind of threw some film on from last year, and they asked around. They decided to join our school, and they've been a great positive impact on our team and on our school. And the kid that went to Troup County was Dylan Reeves. He rejoined us, and he had a big game last night as well. So,
That's
you
awesome.
know, it's really helped our program that was struggling, tremendously. We're going 1-9 and 0-10 and just getting beat by 50. And
Yeah.
so the culture has really changed, and it's been great for us.
Now your guys coming back, some of the leadership on the team, the guys that went through last year and experienced not just being able to play in that championship game in that environment, but also getting the taste of it that they did going through this off season and then through training camp, going even into the first game that you guys had this weekend. Um, how motivated were they with going through those experiences? Just saying, hey, listen, we don't want to do that again.
Well, we had some guys that are really committed, and everybody that takes over a job as a coach, and especially programs that are struggling. You talk about you want to do a culture change, and it really has happened for us. And,
Yeah.
the coaches and the administration and the parents help on that part, but that core group of guys that we had coming back really took that thing and took a lead off season and during summer and spring and fall camp, and guys like Luke Hudson. He's a returning. He started a couple of games of quarterback last year, so he's taken over that role from Ben Cooper. And he's starting linebacker, plays two ways. He had a great game Friday night. He's a big, powerful, strong kid that can throw and run. And he was kind of a leader. And Braden Mosley
Yep.
is another one that, they kind of are our leaders of our team that just kind of, hey, we're going to show up every single day at workouts. We're going to work hard. We're going to push each other. We're going to do the right things. And those guys really, really have stepped up and taken the lead. Eli Johnson is a returner as well, that's done that. So those guys are great leaders. They've kind of learned a lot from last year's group and just taking it up a notch. So, we're pleased with the way it's going right now.
Skipping forward to this year, you talk about starting conference play, region play this upcoming week. You've got Southern Prep. Big game. For those that don't know, you guys are only about 45 minutes to an hour away from each other. Am I right?
Yeah, it's close. It's close.
It's close.
We play them in everything. And when we went to 8-man, Coach Bell was a big help to me. He's a good friend still, and we talk all year long about things and try to mentor each other and help each other's program out as much as you can. He coaches the All-American Bowl up there, and he really, pushes for my kids to be a part of that and gives them that opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's a great rivalry and all the sports that we play them in, and our kids know each other pretty good bit, and it'll be a good game. I watched a little bit of film on them as well. So we're looking forward to get started there, going to Camp Hill this Thursday. We play on Thursday this week.
Yeah. You guys having the little bit, not just the regional rival, the distance rivalry, but you played each other 2 and 3 years ago. It was an 11-man game, and then last year being the 8-man, you've gone back and forth. Seems like this is a game that the kids could really what's the phrase? They could get up for. Really get hyped up for, coming off of a big out of state win. And now they head into a place where, like you said, they know some of the kids, and there's some familiarity. They played each other last year, and so it seems like this is a game the kids can really get hyped up for.
Well, going back on last year as well, we have a 6-man league that we rotate through, and then have to play each other again in playoffs. So we do like to pick some other players up on those off games or some other good competition up on those games. But when you're playing these guys and have a chance to play them again, you really want to make a good showing against them. And you want to get that home field advantage when it comes to playoffs, which is also huge. So that's why it's a big game to open up with. Coach Bell and I both kind of have talked, and maybe we could move it a little bit back in the season a little bit. Moving forward, we might want to do that. But for right now, it's a game number 2, and last year it was our opening game, and this year that's why we picked up Calhoun County to kind of get the jitters out of us before we go play this big game this week.
Well, and not just this big game, but I want to ask you about this, of course, just to go for the next 4 weeks on your season. Now, granted, 3 of them are at home, so that's got to be a big advantage, being able to play there in front of that Springwood crowd. But the next 4 games are conference games. And as you get later in the season, that really starts playing an effect. Of course, you got North River at the end of the year, but when you look at the schedule and playing those conference games right off the bat, instead of having them be later on in the season, in terms of battle testing your guys, or really giving them a chance to find out what kind of a team you have, how big of a factor is that?
Well, being at home is going to be huge. I think maybe you mentioned it last year, and I hadn't even thought about it. We started out the season and we won 2 or 3 games, and then we went to Cornerstone and we didn't have a good ball game, and they played well and beat us. And, we were tired. We were, when you travel a couple of hours, 2 or 3 weeks in a row, it kind of beats up on you. So with the flipping of the schedule this year, they'll be coming with us, and I think that will help. Just how the schedule played out that we inherited, that's the way it is, and you got to play them when they come. Last year it was pretty good because we did get kind of banged up, beat up during the middle of the season, and that's when we were playing some non-conference games. So
right,
level of competition was very good there too, and we dropped a couple of those games. Um, I think we had COVID hit us, and then we had several injuries on a 2 or 3 run play right there, and so I don't know. It kind of looked out that they wasn't region games that we struggled with. So maybe that was just fate or whatever that was. But we'll play them however they roll, and we wanna kind of win all of them this year. That's kind of our goal.
A couple more questions for you. So you guys, you mentioned being right there by Opelika. You guys are able to play Southern Christian after that stretch of conference games. You guys can play Southern Christian there in Opelika. A little bit closer away game. You guys have the away games in Georgia that you're playing. You mentioned being able to play the conference games at home. You touched on it a little bit in the last answer, but being able to play a team like Southern Christian right there, almost in your backyard, in terms of a non-conference schedule, having to go on the road for the other games. How much do you think that'll help the guys coming off of that conference schedule, that conference stretch there with the 4 games?
Well, I think it's everything we're going to do. We're going to kind of take the mentality that this is preparing us for our championship game, and they know that we didn't have a great game last year in the championship game. So when we travel, to play some very quality football teams like Southern Christian, it was back and forth last year, and I think we kind of just barely got away with a victory. And then we play Windsor, who's got a great football program over in the GISA, and they won several championships over there. So we're going to have to travel to them this year. And then Lighthouse, those are quality football teams right there that
Oh
we
yeah.
pick up right there during the middle of the schedule. So, we don't have any one that we could go and just coast and do that with. So it's going to be tough, but I think they're going to prepare us. I think last year we kind of talked about it when Windsor rolled in there. That quality of team really helped us because they were very, very physical football team, and it made us grow up a lot. And we learned a lot by playing them, even though we didn't get the W last year.
Yeah, you talk about that Cornerstone Southern Lighthouse stretch right there in the middle. Last year, all one-score games, all within one score, so super super close. And I feel like that's a big reason you guys were ready when you rolled in the offseason. One more question.
Most definitely.
Obviously, you guys have some big. We've talked about in the non-conference games, the Georgia games, Lighthouse Warriors, Southern Christian. Kind of getting a feel for some other teams. But is there somebody you look at your schedule and go, you know what? Next year I want to try and put this team on here for whatever reason you may have. Is there somebody you look at that go that shoot your shot? Is there somebody you look at and go, I really want to get them on the schedule?
Well, we're just kind of figuring it out. I think you hooked me up with the school in South Carolina. We talked to him and tried to work something out there. We would maybe, creating a new schedule, try to get a game like that we travel and whether it be early on or late in the season, the first or last game, and make a big deal out of it and play some quality competition and give our kids the experience of traveling and doing that. So, there's 3 or 4 that are out there that just learning about 8-man football. We think, maybe I'd like to do that. There's several in Alabama. Right now there's talks going back and forth with our association and some of the other schools about joining. And
Oh wow.
that's kind of an exciting time
Yeah.
right now for us with some of the homeschool situations and brick and mortar school situations. We're talking about expanding and maybe that's just a pipe dream that we would like to see, but we would love to have a big league of 8-man football teams, to compete against. And of course, you got Emmanuel, Alabaster here, you got Ezekiel here, along with Lighthouse in that conference.
Yeah.
So those are, real tough football teams. A team up in Huntsville, was it the Cowboys?
Freedom Cowboys. Yeah.
Yeah, they're tough. So we would like to expand and grow this thing and take on those challenges if we could schedule something and make it work out.
I know I said last question. Is there anybody else that when you look at the AISA and see, maybe how their seasons have gone the last couple of years? Is there anybody that maybe you're reaching out to and trying to pull into the 8-man, game, maybe to help rebuild the team a little bit?
Well, we had a summer conference this year, and it was my first time, being in this area and being in this league, getting to know some of the guys. And I did talk to several of them. We got Hooper and we got Snook and we got some of the guys that have struggled like Springwood was, fielding 11-man teams just due to numbers. And anybody comes watch us play, they'll tell you we did 7-on-7s this year with Lee Scott, and we did it with Chambers, who are two of our leagues. Very powerhouses in 11-man football, and we held our own with them, back and forth. And we just don't have the guys. I mean, our 6-7 core guys, 15 that we have on the team, they can go play for anybody, anywhere. And we just don't have those numbers. And that was why we were having a lot of the problems that we had playing 11-man was just depth and, having to play a 7th or 8th grader versus a senior. And it didn't, that's just a initial mismatch that you have right there.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I've kind of been a guy that's got out there and carried the 8-man banner and tried to push it in the area. Several public schools in Alabama, they're getting to the point where they just seriously need to look at it. I think up in North Alabama, where I'm from, Crossville is not going to have football this year.
Wow.
And they need that option for those kids who really love it and want to play. They need to have that option. And there's several teams, like I said, in North Alabama, where most of my career was from, that I've reached out to and said, guys, y'all need to really, really look at this instead of being those guys that are always, struggling to field a team with 20, 22, 25 guys. Mine is 25, 7 through 12 is what we're dressing. I said, this gives us the opportunity to compete and play great football and have a great environment, and gives our kids exposure, so they can go play at the next level if they want to. So I don't think the way the world's going and things like that, I think it's just going to grow and grow, and we're going to see state of Alabama, we're going to see more and more teams jump on the 8-man bandwagon.
Well, and at times it seems like that's the situation for Tennessee too. And what's wild is if you look at the Midwest and out west where 8-man is big, it's public schools playing it. There's very few private schools.
Yeah.
It's completely different here in the South, and hopefully at some point everything comes around, everything looks at it. But I thought with the way AISA handled 8-man last year, it was respectful. It was kind of feeling it out, and I think it was a huge success. I think it'll grow. Maybe you guys will get some more rivalry games. But Coach, I appreciate you taking the time to join me, and looking forward to seeing what you guys do Thursday night against Southern Prep.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate all you do for the sport.
I appreciate you, Coach. We'll see you.
Thank you.
That's Coach Joey Birch from Springwood School. Always a great guy. I'll tell you what, when I got the chance to go to Springwood last year, I don't know that I had a Springwood game on the schedule, on the broadcast schedule. And it just so happened, I don't know if I've told this story, but the way it worked out was I was actually in Atlanta for work, for my actual Clark Kent job. And I got word, I think I went down Wednesday, and I got word on Wednesday that because of the weather, it was a whole weekend they were moving games. So the Lighthouse Warriors Springwood game got moved to Thursday night. Now I was already planning on doing Southern Prep and Cornerstone on Friday night. And so it worked out. I was able to go do Lighthouse Warriors Springwood on Thursday night. That game was awesome. That was a fun game. The Springwood crowd was awesome. Loved being there. Coach Birch, they're very hospitable. I'm very appreciative of the environment there, and of course, Southern Prep was as well. Always love going down to that area and interacting with those coaches. Always a good time. But great talk there with Coach Birch. He's a good guy and doing great things there for Springwood, and I'm really excited to see 8-man grow in that area. It's just not even so much, in terms of being an 8-man stan, if you will, as the kids say, but just knowing that it's helping kids, play a healthier game of football. Like he said, you're not making a 7th grader line up against a senior, unless it's a very drastic situation in 8-man. Most of the times you're able to line up very evenly, maybe not in skill level, but in terms of age and grade. It's very even. So love to see that. All right, let's talk about the games coming up this weekend. Let me change this real quick because I think this game is on Saturday. Actually, I think 2 of these games are on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. Let me switch this up. Okay, so let's start here in Tennessee. I know I started the recap. I think the recap in Tennessee. I'm going to start the preview here in Tennessee and work out. Friday night, Christian Community is hosting Grace Academy. Grace coming off of I didn't mention they had a win in an 11-man game against the public school, 20-7. So Grace technically 2-0 coming into this game against Christian Community. CCS with a big bounce back win over Franklin Classical this last week, so that'll be a good one. Lancaster Christian 0-2, 2 tough losses. They roll into Franklin Christian, who was off last week, and had a big win against FCA. So another big conference game. 2 big conference games there. South Haven Christian heads to Zion, heads to Columbia to take on the Eagles. And this game over the last couple of years has been fun, been very, very interesting, kind of back and forth. So I think South Haven's gotten the win in both games, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Let's pull it up, the game history up real quick. If it'll cooperate with me. There we go. Zion Christian right there. I'll tell you what, folks. A big tool is on Max Preps. If you pull up a school and go to more, they have game history. It's pardon the pun. It's a game changer, absolute game changer. Okay, so they have played South Haven. Zion and South Haven have played just the one game. I thought they played last year. Okay, they've played just the one game, and it was a 30-18 win for South Haven. I was at that one, so big matchup there between SEEK and TSIAA. On Thursday, Franklin Classical School, they will head to Innovation Academy in Springfield. First game for the Spartans, I believe, is Innovation Academy's mascot. Let's see. No, the Sentinels. The Sentinels. That's who they are. So Innovation Academy Sentinels and Franklin Classical School Knights will face off on Thursday night. That game being played in Springfield. So big kickoff there for the Sentinels. And that game replacing Lighthouse Christian was supposed to be playing Innovation that night, and Franklin Classical stepped in and took over that spot. Tri-Cities Christian off last week. They are headed to Mount Juliet to take on the Tennessee Heat. And last year, Heat were the first game back for Tri-Cities. Got a big win there up in Kingsport. But Tri-Cities, man, they've built. They're ready. They're coming in. This should be a good one. I'm looking forward to it. Freedom Cowboys are on the road taking on Cornerstone Christian Rainsville, who are coming off, I talked about earlier, that tough overtime loss. Freedom coming in at 1-0. So that one battle between SEEK and CFA. So that'll be a good one. Evangel Christian. It's the battle of the Evangels. Evangel Christian Alabaster. They are hosting Evangel Christian Montgomery. And Evangel Montgomery has never beaten Evangel Christian the Lightning. So Lions and Lightning taking on each other. 2 conference champions. Evangel Montgomery winning the AISA title last year. Evangel Christian Alabaster winning the ACSC title. So battle between 2 champions. And then also on Thursday night, East Central, speaking of ACSC, Thursday night, East Central is headed to Riverside. Riverside off this past week. And they are taking on East Central for the first time ever. So big game. East Central coming off the shutout loss to Evangel. And Riverside coming off that tough loss to Zion. Lighthouse Warriors, they're on the road at Southern Christian. Southern Christian looking to kick off their season. Lighthouse rolling in at 2-0. So it'll be a big one there for the Patriots and the Warriors. Big ACSC matchup. Trinity Christian Homeschool, they are at Success Unlimited. Both teams come in at 0-1, so a chance for one of those 2 teams to get their first win of the season. Ezekiel Academy, they were supposed to go to Georgia this last Friday. That game did not work out. but they are headed to Meridian, Mississippi to take on Russell Christian. Of course, I mentioned they're coming off of that big overtime win over Cornerstone Rainsville, so this should be a fun one there. Of course, two brand new head coaches there at Ezekiel and at Russell, so that one will be good. Tuscaloosa Christian, Jacksonville Christian. It was a big conference matchup there in the CFA between the two of them. I want to look real quick at the history. I know Jacksonville just started having. I think they either dropped from 11 man or. Yeah, I think that's what it is. So they hadn't played, and I think they've won the last 2 years. I do want to check that real quick. I mentioned earlier in the show Jacksonville Christian 2-0 and just absolutely putting up some numbers over there on the road. The first game on the road, and I think they were on the road for the second game too. Yeah, they were on the road for the first two games. They had went to Pelham or Alabaster, that area, to take on Trinity, and then they went to Selma to take on Meadowview. So two big road wins there for them. They finally get to play a game there at home, and they are 2-1 against Tuscaloosa Christian. Last year, a 40-34 win, so super close. And then 2 years ago, 48-20, and then 2020 was the first year in 8-man. They lost in 21 and won in 20, so 2-0 against the Warriors out of Tuscaloosa Christian. Last CFA game, Victory Christian out of Columbus, Mississippi, rather. They're actually taking on Unity Christian out of Leland, Mississippi. And so they'll go from one side of the state to the other. But Unity is actually an HCAA game, Heartland Christian Athletic Conference, or HCAC, I believe is the acronym, Heartland Christian Athletic Conference. So they've played each other a couple times, but this is the only matchup between CFA and Heartland Conference that I know of. I don't think there's been any other crossover unless Russell's maybe played Unity, but so not a lot of crossover there. So that's kind of a cool, HCAA. I mean, they've got teams in Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, had Cornerstone Spartans in Missouri for a while. So, they're not really close to Alabama. And then you've got Victory, who's in Mississippi, but they're right over the border, so they're in an Alabama conference, so kind of a cool crossover there between the two of them. Mentioned on Thursday, Springwood is at Southern Prep, and just talked about that game a little bit, big rivalry game between the two. Matter of fact, I'm going to pull up Google Maps real quick because I want to see Lynette to Camp Hill. I know they're both in eastern Alabama. 37 minutes. Camp Hill is actually a little bit further into Alabama. Lynette, Springwood School, they are actually right over the border, and it's also the timeline, the time change line too. So they are like just over the border. So very close. 37 minutes is what I just saw, maybe 30 minutes, give or take. So big rivalry game there. In the AISA, Meadowview Christian is playing an 11-man game, and I did not get their opponent. I think it's Southern Academy, if I'm not mistaken. So Meadowview coming into this game at 0-2, or 0-1 maybe. Let's see, real quick. I think it's just 0-1. I think it's just the loss to Jacksonville. Yeah, 0-1, just the loss to Jacksonville. So they're playing an 11-man game. We'll see how it works out for them. Cornerstone Columbiana, they have an 11-man game as well. They did win their 11-man game. Also, Southern Prep had an 11-man game last week, and they lost that one to Lakeside School. Cornerstone Christian Columbiana had another 11-man game as well, and they got the 46-12 win there against an AISA team. I think it was Snook Christian. So big Cornerstone starting off the season with two 11-man games, so we'll see how that goes for them. Switching over to South Carolina, Pack Panthers. They are at Harvest Christian. Pack coming off a big comeback win against Jefferson Davis Academy, and Harvest coming off of the loss there to Faith Christian. So Pack on the road there. Augusta Eagles, they are at Victory Christian. Augusta coming off the big SIFA win. Victory Christian coming off a big win against Orangeburg. So two teams with a little bit of momentum meeting there in an SIFA matchup in South Carolina. And I think those are the only two games in the Palmetto State. Southwest Christian switching over to Arkansas. They are at Trinity Christian out of Oklahoma, I believe. And that game is happening on Saturday. That's a big, mention the Heartland Christian Conference. That's a big matchup in that conference. I mentioned that game happening on Saturday. Abundant Life Christian, they are at Arkansas Christian on Friday night. Abundant Life making it to the championship game last year for that conference, coming up short. Arkansas Christian has struggled the last couple years, and so this should be a good way to kick off the season for the Knights, I believe, of Arkansas Christian. The Owls from Abundant Life looking to kick off the season with a win as well. Cornerstone Spartans, they're on the road at Blue Jacket High School on Saturday. Spartans' first game of the year, so we'll see how that goes for them. And then jumping to Louisiana, only one game down there this weekend. John Paul the Great taking on the North Shore Vultures. I mentioned JP2 is 2-0, and North Shore, I believe, is 0-1, maybe 1-0. So we'll keep an eye on how they do. But that's your whole slate of games. I know there's obviously games in the different conferences for Georgia, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina. Matter of fact, you know what? I'm going to run through the North Carolina real quick. Let's see. Because I'm curious. All right, so in North Carolina, well, let's talk about last week. So you had Pungo Christian over Father Capodanno, 44-0. Harrell's Christian over Arundel Parrott, 47-0. Halifax over Faith Christian, 27-18. So coming up this week, excuse me, Liberty Christian is at Bethel Christian, Northwest Halifax at Arundel Parrott. The defending champions, if I'm not mistaken. Arundel Parrott might be. No, they're still 8-man. Northeast Academy at Community Christian. Rocky Mount Academy is at Halifax Academy. And keep going down. Carolina Wildcats out of Pickens, South Carolina. They are headed to Cary, North Carolina to take on Cary Christian, who was off this last week. Pungo Christian is at Mattamusket. I think I'm saying that right. Sand Hills Classical Christian is at Wayne Christian. Father Capodanno at Lee Christian. John Paul II Catholic over at Lawrence Academy, the co-op team there. And then Wayne Christian at Harrell's Christian. So several great games happening across North Carolina this upcoming weekend. I've run through some of the other games happening. It's going to be a fun weekend of football. It's always a fun weekend of football. Looking forward to seeing some of the young men who get picked for the second round of the Fairlife Core Power Protein Extreme Offensive and Defensive Players of the Week. Again, those players are picked off of stats uploaded to Max Preps, and with it being a close game or a comeback game, something to that effect. So we'll keep an eye on some of those guys and try to pick some of those, and we will make that announcement on Wednesday. I think that just about does it. This has been Extreme Talk presented by Complete Real Estate, where experience and integrity matters. Thank you so much for listening. It's football time. See ya!